Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. We're moving forward with our supplementary material. You notice that we're trying to make these lectures a bit shorter. Today, we'll take a look at two different topics. First, we're going to look at Sahih Hadiths, take a little bit of a closer look. So far, we've said that Ahad Hadiths, remember, a Hadith which does not fulfill the conditions of being mutawatir is classified as Ahad. And most of the Hadiths are Ahad Hadiths, and they are divided into Sahih, Hasan, and Da'if. Now, the Sahih, which is the strongest of the Hadiths, and the Hasan, which are fair, good, still acceptable Hadiths, are further subdivided into Sahih lidhatihi, Sahih for itself on its own merits, or it could be Sahih lighayrihi, that it is Sahih on the merits of support by another Hadith. We've already covered this classification, and so the strongest level is Sahih lidhatihi, and that fulfills the 5 conditions that make a Hadith Sahih, and we've already covered that. Now, even within the strongest level, Sahih lidhatihi, the Hadith scholars have further identified some chains of transmission as stronger than others, labeling some chains as among the strongest and most authentic of all. Some scholars have picked individual chains and said that these are the strongest of all the chains, but most of them try to pick a strongest chain for each of the companions who relate hadith. So they will identify a particular chain, for example, emanating from Abu Huraira, as the strongest and most authentic chain coming from him. This may be because it has a particular student of his who spent the most time with him, or that student was the most praiseworthy, etc. So, in other words, the narrators from the companions are at different levels of adala and dhabt, and the best chains are the ones with the best narrators, those who are more of a thiqah than others in the eyes of the scholars. And the exact same principle would apply to other companions. For each companion, the scholars have tried to identify the strongest possible chain. And so, even though all the chains are strong enough to make the hadith sahih lidhatihi, sahih on its own merits, the scholars have identified some of those chains as stronger than others. Just to make things a bit more concrete and to bring home the amount of detail and the amount of effort that went into hadith collection and hadith authentication, we'll just pick a couple of examples. So for the companion Ibn Mas'ud, the scholars have identified this particular chain as especially strong. That the chain that Ibrahim al-Nakha'i reports from Alqamah, who reports from Ibn Mas'ud, who reports from the Prophet, peace be upon him. So the chain that goes from Ibn Mas'ud through Alqamah, through Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, is considered an especially strong chain. Now, for a different companion, for Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhuma, that chain would go from al-Zuhri, reporting from Salim, reporting from Abdullah ibn Umar, who would then report from the Prophet, peace be upon him. For Ali ibn Abi Talib, we have the chain Muhammad ibn Sirin through Abida ibn Amr, through Ali ibn Abi Talib, through the Prophet. And so those would be examples that the scholars have identified as the strongest chains for the companions Ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, there are other strong chains that are still considered strong and sahih, but not as strong as the ones above. So, for example, when we have the chain of Hamad ibn Salama reporting from Thabit, reporting from Anas ibn Malik, who was a companion, reporting from the Prophet, peace be upon him, That's considered a strong Sahih chain, but not as strong as the ones we've already mentioned. Same goes for the chain of Suhail ibn Abi Salih reporting from Abu Salih, reporting from Abu Huraira, reporting from the Prophet. So why would the scholars do this? Well, it has several implications. One of them is whether a Sahih hadith, a Sahih ahad hadith, leads to yaqeen, certain knowledge, or dhann, a probable conjecture that the Prophet said this. This is a huge issue and will become important for us in Module 2, whether the hadith is strong enough to be considered that it conveys certain knowledge known by the hadith scholars as yaqeen, or does it just convey dhann? And inshallah, we will come back to this in Module 2. I'm just sort of planting the seed for you here so that we've heard these terms when we encounter them next. And if there are differences in the phraseology of a given hadith, and it's coming from multiple different chains of narration, then the version from the strongest chain of narration is accepted as the most authentic. So you see that it makes sense. Now let's move to a different topic here, and that is Haddathana versus An. This will require a little bit of Arabic, and I apologize for those who don't speak Arabic, but I think you'll still be able to follow. And the idea here is that in the chain of transmission, and we'll see examples shortly, the Hadith scholars have made a very interesting distinction between the phraseology used by each of the narrators when he states how he came to know the Hadith from his predecessor or his teacher. And there are two basic forms. One form asserts unequivocally that he heard the Hadith directly from his predecessor, such as Haddathana, he said to us. And remember, we are talking here about a time when there was no video, there were no recordings. You either had to be there to hear the person or not. So Haddathana means he said to us. Or something equivalent would be Sami'tu, I heard from, I directly heard from. So if narrator A says about his sheikh B, he would say Haddathana B, that C said. So when he uses the word Haddathana, he is saying that I heard directly from him. Or Sami'tu, I heard, directly from him. Those are the implications. Haddathana means he said to us. Sami'tu means I heard from. So those would be definitive statements. Now the second form leaves it more vague, and that is an. And an in Arabic means from or according to. Now when this form is used, the narrator is saying that the hadith is being imputed to his predecessor, but he's not asserting that he heard it from him directly. He may have, but we can't be absolutely sure. And so for example, A was told by a fellow student on a day he missed class that their Sheikh B relayed a hadith. Now A would say, it has come to me an B that C said, and so forth. So in this case, he feels that his Sheikh B said the hadith, but he didn't hear it directly, so he says an B instead of Sami'tu B or Haddathana B. So it means narrator A is saying according to B instead of saying I heard B or B said to us. And the hadith scholars consider Haddathana, he said to us, or an equivalent formulation like Sami'tu, I heard, to be a stronger form of narration than an or according to. Now, this may seem a bit esoteric, but again, that's why it's in the supplementary material. And here again, I reiterate my apology. This would need some Arabic, but these are two hadiths that we've already encountered in Module 1. And I just wanted to bring this to your attention because very often we don't pay any attention to the isnad at all. And even if we pay attention, we're certainly not going to pay attention to this sort of nuance. But if you look at the first hadith, the hadith about إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that actions are according to intentions, look at its chain of transmission. It says حدثنا الحميدي عبد الله ibn Zubayr. Then it says قال. So what did حدثنا, he said to us, Abdullah ibn Zubayr said to us, he said حدثنا Sufyan, that Sufyan told us. And what did Sufyan say? Sufyan said حدثنا يحيى ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, that Yahya ibn Sa'id told us directly. What did he say? He said أخبرني محمد ibn Ibrahim. He said Muhammad ibn Ibrahim told me, again directly. What did Muhammad ibn Ibrahim say? أنه سمع علقمة ibn وقاص الليثي, so that he heard directly from Alqama. What did Alqama say? Alqama said سمعت عمر ibn al-Khattab, I heard Umar ibn al-Khattab saying on the minbar. And what did Umar say? سمعت رسول الله, I heard the Prophet of Allah say إنما الأعمال بالنيات, to the rest of the hadith. So in every link of this chain, it is a definitive statement, حدثنا or سمعت. Now, let's look at another hadith that we encountered, which is من كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. Whoever lies about me on purpose, attributes to me something that I didn't say falsely and knowingly, let him await or expect or anticipate that he will occupy his seat in hellfire. So let's look at the chain of narration here. حدثنا أبو خيثمة Zuhair ibn Harb. So Abu Khaythama was sort of his kunya or his nickname, and that'll become important to us a little bit later. So Abu Khaythama, his actual name was Zuhair ibn Harb. And he said, Haddathana Hushaym. So again, Haddathana. But now, what did Hushaym say? Hushaym doesn't say Haddathana Abi Zubayr, he says An Abi Zubayr. And Abi Zubayr says An Jabir. And then Jabir says, قال Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and then he gives the hadith. So here you see examples of سمعت, حدثنا, عن, and قال. And قال we can consider an intermediate form because it just says he said. It doesn't say he said to us. It doesn't say I was directly in his presence. It doesn't say directly I heard from him. But it is a stronger form probably than an. So if I say, if I'm making a historical statement and I say, President Obama said, it means I have confidence that he said it, but maybe he didn't say it directly to me. And so you can see the differences here. And so the hadith scholars, as we said, consider the first form, haddathana, or its equivalent, to be a stronger form. And this makes the hadith more authoritative in their eyes. And it also plays into some of the different criteria that the hadith scholars used to gauge the narrators as thiqat. And so you have probably gotten a sense that Sahih al-Bukhari is in general considered to be the strongest hadith collection. And one of the reasons is that Imam al-Bukhari, in judging that a chain is complete and that the narrator is reliable, insisted that if a narrator uses an according to, when referring to to his predecessor in a hadith chain, then it must be proven that he has directly received some hadiths from that same predecessor, who is presumably his sheikh or his teacher, before his narration can be accepted. So in other words, if narrator A says according to B and then continues, there must be other hadiths where he narrates directly from B, proving that he did hear at least some hadiths directly from B by saying things like haddathana B or sami'tu min B, and so forth. Imam Muslim, on the other hand, only required the reasonable possibility that narrator A met his predecessor, narrator B. For example, they lived in the same time and area, or A is known to have at some point traveled to where B lived, etc. So you see that Imam Bukhari's criteria is a more rigorous set of conditions, and that's what makes people consider his hadith collection to be the most authentic and sound of all. So this is one application of حدثنا versus عن. He said to us versus according to. Soon we will see that this difference in phraseology also has some other implications when we tackle our next topic. And just to put you on a cliffhanger and make you interested in joining, that next topic will be called tadlis. It is the topic of tadlis in hadith. And so until we get there, inshallah, ask yourself, do I know what tadlis is? Have I heard this word before? Assalamu alaikum. We'll see you next time, inshallah.